Welcome to Numbers Simplified. In this channel, we seek to simplify and solve numerical problems. Today, we'll be looking at surd form. That is to say, the exact value that you get when you try to find the square root of any number. But we're making use of the product of prime factors. Let's dive into the terminology. 1. The square. Now, recall from the square root video that we posted, I encourage you to go over it, for it has a lot of insight. We will dive into a quick example. Example 1. The square of root 5 is given to be root 5 times root 5, that is to say, root 5 squared. That would give us a 5. And recall, we say that root 5 is the square root of 5. Now, jumping into the square root. Example 2. The square root of 2 is root 2. And note, if the final answer is not an integer, the value is preferably left in surd form. And also, from the laws of indices, if we have the square root of x times y, we can distribute that square root sign over the terms multiplying each other. That is to say, root x times y is equal to root x times root y. So that's one thing to take note of. Going back to our terminology, the surd form. Root x is the surd form if x is not a square. It is also referred to as the exact form in some questions or some examples. Now let's look at another example. Which of the two results in surd form, 4 and 13, when finding the square root? Of course, the solution. Root 4 would give us a 2, but root 13 is better left in surd form. Otherwise, the answer is not exact. So remember, subscribe not to miss out, but learn more on the topics. Right, so now let's dive into some steps. So how are the steps and what are the steps we use in finding the root of any number, whether we get exact values or we don't? So we are going to outline the steps over here. Step number 1, express the number as a product of prime factors. And step 2, pair repeated prime factors in different groups, leaving out unpaired factors. 3, select one of the set or one of the group, and then you include also the one that was left out under the square root. Great. Let's look at an example. Example 3. Find the square root of 18. So as usual, from the prime factors video, recall, we talked about how to find the prime factors and the product of the prime factors, giving us the number itself. It is from these prime factors that we are able to come up with the square root of any number. This is, of course, for those who are trying to find the square roots without using a calculator. Right, so great. The factors of 18, we will start with the smallest prime factor, and we know that 18 is divisible by 2, so we'll start with 2. So 18 divided by 2, we get 9. Then the next small prime factor there is for 9 is a 3, so we now divide by 3. To get 3, we divide 3 by 3, we get 1. So we have all the prime factors, then we simply multiply them so that we get 2 times 3 times 3. And we pair the common factors, which are 3's. In this case, we are saying that the root of 18 is equals to root of 2 times 3 squared. Now remember, we distribute the square root to separate the 3 squared to be under 1 square root times the root of 2 having its own root there. Then we know that the root of 3 squared will cancel out with the squared. so that we have 3 times root 2. Example 4. Find the square root of 45. So we find the prime factors. This time around, I'll start with the 5 because I see that it's easy to divide this one by 5. 5 is a factor already because the last digit is a 5. So 45 divided by 5, we get 9. And we know 9 is divisible by 3. So that's the smallest prime factor that we can use. So 9 divided by 3, we get 3. 3 divided by 3, we get 1. So we have our factors. We multiply the factors together. We do the same thing. So that is to say the square root of 45 is given to be the square root of 3 squared times 5. Now we separate the terms inside the square root so that we have root of 3 squared. So the square root and the squared will cancel out to give us a 3 times root 5, which did not have a pair. So our final answer becomes 3 root 5. As easy as that. Let's dive into another example. Example 5. Find the square root of 32. So here we see that 2 is the smallest prime factor. So we start with that. So 32 divided by 2, we get 16. 16 divided by 2, we get 8. 8 divided by 2, we get 4. 4 divided by 2, we get 2. 2 divided by 2, we get 1. So what we have are 5 2's multiplying each other, and we can only pair 2 2's. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So the final 2 does not have a pair, and we leave it out. So in that case, we are going to have 2 times 2 squared times 2. Now introducing the square root to that, the square root will cancel out with the square root of the first 2 times 2, and then the square root will just land on the 2 that has no pair, so that we have the final answer as 2 times 2 times root 2, giving us 4 times root 2. Great job. Now let's move on to example 6. With example 6, we are asked to find the square root of 11,858. So finding the prime factors. Since the last digit is an even number, we know that the first prime factor would be a 2. So dividing that by 2, we get 5,929. That divided by 7, we get 847. That divided by 7, we get 121. Divided by 11, we get 11. By 11, we get 1. So we have all our factors. We multiply them together, and we see that there is a 2 that is not paired. So we leave that one out. We just multiply 7 times 11. That is equivalent to being squared because it is repeated 2 times. Now, as we introduce the square root sign, we are going to have 7 times 11 squared times 2, with the square root affecting all of the terms. But of course, we distribute the square root over the 2 terms so that we have the square root cancelling out with the squared on the 7 times 11 term. Then we would have 7 times 11 times the root of 2, because the 2 was not paired to any other 2. So our final answer becomes 77 root 2. Right, let's move on to example 11. So we are asked to find the square root of 10,368. So as usual, we start with the prime factors. So the one that can fit in here, and the smallest is a 2. So we divide by 2, we get 5,184. Divided by 2, we get 2,592. By 2, we get 1,296. By 2, we get 648. By 2, we get 324. By 2, we get 162. By 2, we get 81. This time around, we introduce a 3 because we can no longer divide 81 with a 2 without leaving a remainder. So by 3, we get 27. By 3, we get 9. By 3, we get 3. By 3, we get 1. So we have all of our factors. We group the ones that are repeated and leave out the ones that are not repeated. So as usual, the 2 is left out. So we have 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 all squared times 2. Then when we distribute the square root will cancel out with the squared, but for the 2, it wouldn't cancel out because it's only 1 2. So that we get our answer as 72 root 2. That's our final answer. If you've made it to this part of the video, I say congratulations. Great job to you. And yes, I leave you with the following task. Without using a calculator, find the answer to 228,488. Right. Remember, your feedback is always welcome here. Share your experience in our sessions, your preferred numerical future topics, your questions, concerns, and suggestions. Thank you so much for watching Numbers Simplified. God loves you.